everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And already the lighting is changing because the sun's deciding to come out. Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today we're just going to hang out and do kind of a discussion video. One of my members asked me to do a discussion video about Booktube consumerism and book buying, and I was doing a little research on this, and I see that this was more of a topic about a year or so ago. It was something that was kind of a bigger deal back then, but specifically I think I don't know how much I feel like this is even a topic for me in the romance community, and I'll get into like why. Also, it's something I've just never thought about, right? Like I don't get pressured into anything. But part of that has to do with the kind of person that I am and the way that I go about doing things. I don't get pressured into things that way, but I can understand how people new to Booktube or people new to the community might feel pressured into things more than other people are. Yes, I have my book haul cart right here. I'm just going to kick back and chill for this. But I did pose the question on my community tab to ask. I also put it on my Insta. But the thing with Insta is people can only say so much if they respond to a story. So mostly people just told me yes or no, and I felt it was about like a 95% that no, people didn't feel pressured into buying books. And then the vast majority of comments on my community tab were all like, no, I don't feel pressured just because someone else is. I do feel that certain authors get hyped more than others, and so we see the same authors' books and certain booktubers just going in a circle with stuff. And I definitely see what she means by that. I saw a lot of really complimentary things that some people say they trust other booktubers with which books to buy more than others, and I feel like that just naturally happens when you find a booktuber that you really jive with, when you find a creator that you feel like you are never led astray by the recommendations, and so you end up buying every book that they recommend to you. I definitely understand that. And so a couple ways I want to talk about this is, first, I just want to talk about my own book buying, which I feel like I'm pretty transparent about. I've had this channel for a little over 2.5 years, and I've made 38 book hauls in that time, just in this year alone, because I do track my spending, especially because this year I will be filing taxes for what I've made on YouTube. And the thing is that by tracking my spending, I'll be able to write it off, because I definitely, this year specifically, spent more on books than I will be bringing in, just because that's, maybe next year I can even it out. But so far this year, I've spent $4,300 on books, which is about an average spend of about $400 a month. However, the list price for the books that I bought was $7,300. So I've saved about $3,000 by getting used books. Some books are gifts. We'll get into that in a second. I don't get gifted as many books as you think, and that's okay. I don't expect them. I think there are not really any people on Booktube, specifically romance Booktube, who expect to get sent books. It's still something that's always welcome and exciting. Anyway, like I said, I'll get to that. So that covers the how much that I buy. That was a total of the amount of books that I have brought in this year so far is 729. So I bring in a lot of books, guys. I bring in a lot. But you also know, if you follow me, that I have read 640 books this year. Have I read all of the ones I purchased? No. But it's not as if I'm only reading 5 books a month and I'm bringing in that amount of books. I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books on my Kindle. And a lot of the times books that I'm purchasing, they're either books with beautiful covers, which is my rainbow bookshelf back there, or they are, here's an example right here, or they are Kindle books that are self-published that I read and I loved them and I want a physical copy of them so that I can touch it and look at it and it's beautiful. So that is about split down the middle for me between books that are new and I haven't heard about them, or used books, or books with beautiful covers that I'm tracking down and finding at thrift stores. This book was only 99 cents. And then books that are, new coming out and I want to own them. Or books that I've already read and again, I want to own a copy of it. So that is usually the factors that go into me deciding what to read and then purchase. And then based on the other booktubers that I follow and what I see on Insta and the authors that I love, I've just recently made a video about my auto-buy authors. Those are authors that I not only will I don't just read them on KU, I will purchase their book, whether it's a physical one or I buy the ebook. Or I support their Patreon, like Katie Robert. I'm obsessed with Katie Robert. I love her to death. So those are all factors that go into mine. So that is what I'm purchasing. And then where I buy from. I do live right behind a Barnes & Noble. I brought that up many times. That is where these two came. I went through yesterday. It was right before my quarantine. I'm quarantining right now. And I go to Barnes & Noble once or twice a week, either to just get a coffee and walk around because there's not much to do these days. Everything's canceled, or because there are new releases coming out and I want to own them. I do order from Amazon quite a lot. I personally would rather go to the Barnes & Noble in-store. I know they're both big box places. I understand that they're both, but I would still know that I am directly supporting the people who work at that Barnes & Noble I go to. I am friends with a lot of sellers at this point. So if I'm going to pick over to brand new places, I'm usually going to go to the Barnes & Noble, except for self-published, where I find some use self-published by going through Abe Books or Thrift. In general, I get my self-published books from Amazon because it is the most convenient and trusted way to get them. I'm just being honest. Format wise, I usually will go ebook first for stuff. That's just me. Because it's the most immediate way to get a book. There's something so satisfying about that. And then if I really love the ebook, the next step up is to buy the physical book or the audiobook. I love audiobooks as well. And with the ending of Audible Escape, I have been purchasing a lot more audiobooks, but that really quickly gets very expensive, even more so obviously than buying physical books. So I have turned back to script recently. We'll see how it goes. So far we're in the honeymoon phase again. But really I'm just all about how do I get my hands on the book that I want and what is the most expedient way to do it. Could I be more conscious about, encouraging small bookstores or supporting things online? Yes, I could. And I have looked into other options more recent. That's something I love about Abe Books is they put all of these small thrift stores and bookstores are listed on them. And so you can choose to buy from a smaller retailer through Abe Books. So that's kind of nice. I'm especially liking finding used bookstores that way. That's something I love about thrift books too. I love having a used bookstore, have all their books pushed to one place. That's really helpful for me since I can't travel to those thrift stores to get the books. I really enjoy that. So that's just a little bit of discussion about my book buying, and it's something that I always love to do. I bring this up many, many times with people. I have a pretty mobile income. I live in a pretty cheap apartment where I live. I live in Fargo, and it's a pretty low cost of living here. I have a very good job. I'm single. I don't have any kids. I don't have any pets. I have a 1-bedroom apartment that costs a fifth of my income. And yeah, I have debts that I'm working on, but I still have, you could, from in the beginning, I spend about $300 to $400 on books a month, and, you know, I'm not hurting myself, you know, like I'm not living beyond my means, because I don't really buy anything else. I don't have any expensive hobbies. I mean, this is my expensive hobby, but like I don't gamble. I don't really drink that much. I don't, you know, do any recreational drugs. Like there's nothing else that my money is going towards. Books are my drug of choice. They are what I choose to put it into. I also I think the reason why a lot of my comments back from you guys were that sometimes you feel the pressure just because you're really excited about a book, which that's what Booktube is for. You know, there is a certain aspect of Booktube that it is to hype books. Like that is why some booktubers get sent things from publishers and media places. Like if it wasn't making those companies money, they wouldn't be giving people books or asking us for reviews, or NetGalley wouldn't be able to exist, you know, if there weren't vloggers and bloggers and reviewers reading their books and then that turning into sales. Why would they do it? They would just do it on their own if we weren't helpful to them, right? So a little bit of the thing of like Booktube consumerism, I'm like, but that's kind of the point of Booktube, is for you to, I mean, because that's how I started on it. Number one, I wanted someone to talk about the book with, because I think it really got going for me when I was reading Sarah J. Maas for the first time, like independently. I was reading her, and I wanted someone to talk about the book with. And then when I saw popular books on there, there's one of my favorite books of all time is called Graceling by Kristen Kishore, which she has another book in this series coming out, and I'm like nervous about that. But I had never had anyone to talk with that book about, because none of my friends had read it. So I went on YouTube and I looked it up, and Christine Riccio from Poland Bananas Books, she had a review for Graceling. It was very old, and then that quickly led me to her newer stuff, where she had also read Sarah J. Maas. And so I was watching, I still love a discussion video by Christine. Like, it's one of the things with her being a writer and being more having so much going on in her life that I missed, because I loved the energy she would have. And whenever I get really excited about a book, I channel a little bit of Poland Bananas when I talk about one. And if you watch some of my very first reviews, like I did one for Kingdom of Ash and stuff, I was definitely channeling her. Now I have my own. My enthusiasm doesn't need any extra assistance, but I just loved how passionate she was about books, and I try to bring that same thing to when I talk about romance novels, right? So there is like, that's my point. That is the point of Booktube, is for us to share our feelings about books and talk about the ones we're reading. And I have said this again and again in my, you know, because I'm planning to put this video in my like behind the Booktube playlist, is that it is only within, I mean, because I started doing NetGalley in like 2018. I would only get approved for a few books. And I have some of you who are so nice. Some of you who watch me. Let's try the light one more time, because nope, we might not be able to do this. We might just have to be a little bit darker today. Sorry. Who will say like, man, you should get a review everything, like how much you talk about romance. And I'm like, thank you. But it takes time to build up that clout, like to have a relationship with a publisher. Like I have friends who, like, their Bookstagrams, they have great relationship with publishers, and some of them have been nice enough to share that with me, and others haven't, and that's not a disservice. Like, if you have your connection, you need to protect that and not just pass it to other people and things like that. And one of the things I'm always really clear about is that I read so many books, and I like to read self-pub authors, and I like to read older books. I love to read historical romances. I don't have to be reading the newest book that's coming out. There was someone in the comments who agreed this with me, is that I actually will back off if a book is super popular, because I don't always agree with mainstream opinion. So if it's a bunch of my Booktube friends that were all agreeing on the same thing, I'll give it a chance. But like Bringing Down the Duke, which was a mainstream historical romance. It was in a book of the month box. Everyone who wasn't in romance Booktube was reading it, and I was like, I'm not going to like this book, because the things that they like about it are things that I don't like. And sure enough, I gave in to the pressure and I read that one, and I really disliked it, because it isn't a good representation of historical romance, in my opinion, and it doesn't do the work that I want to see done in a historical romance. So I'm, in fact, the opposite. Like, there are some authors that I now completely trust them, and so I'm hyped for their new books, like Tessa Bailey or Alyssa K. Adams or everybody's name, Helen Huang. Like, I am hyped for their new books, and they will be hyped books. Rosie Dannon, I really loved The Roommate. I'm super excited for the next one. So there are a few romances where I will be on the hype train for those. But for the most part, look how many books I have. I've just told you how many books I've bought. And the vast majority of them are backlist titles for authors. Like, I'm currently purchasing all of the backlist titles of Katie Robert. I'm working on my stash of her. A lot of those books, none of my viewers have ever heard of because they only know her for the Wicked Villain series. So I really, really try to not just push the books that are popular. I want to be, like, I have people daily say, oh, you're so bad for my wallet. And I know they're meaning that nicely because I say the same thing to people too. Like, I'll watch a recommendation video by Tamika or Jess or Books by Samantha, and I will just like start buying all of them because I'm like, oop, the reasons you like this, I'm buying it. Mary from Makeup and Mary, she likes dark, twisted romances. I've agreed 95% with her. So if she's read the book, I'm purchasing it. So it's just something that I understand the stress. And I was doing a little bit of research before this because I remember when it was drama, it was like 2 years ago. And actually Bethany, her channel, she just had a talk about Booktuber consumerism just a couple months back. She did a live show with some creators. And she says, like, she's gotten much more discerning now that she has a more established thing, and she will be more picky about which one she's actually purchasing. And I totally agree with that. I've got more discerning in the fact that I know which books I'm most likely to read. So the places where I'm most likely to just buy whatever is I still get sucked into pretty books. So when I walk through Barnes & Noble, if there's a YA cover, that just slays me, particularly fantasy. Do I have any in this stack? I don't have any YA fantasy in this stack, but I just hauled somewhere. I'm still going to buy that book, and it will probably sit on my shelf for a year, and then I'll probably unhaul it. I have an eBay shop right now where I'm getting rid of a lot of books, and particularly a lot of YA fantasy, because I've bought the books over the past 2 years when I used to watch different booktubers. And so I would do it. I would buy the books because they're pretty. And I used to love YA fantasy. So it was hard for me to let go of the fact that there's really only a couple authors that I read in YA fantasy now. You know, like, there are still some authors that I'm going to pick up their new book, right? Like, I just read a Brandon Sanderson Starsight the other day, and I was like, damn, this was good. This was a sci-fi. Like, I'm still going to read Jay Kristoff's books. I'm still going to read Brandon Sanderson's YA books that he puts out. I'll still read Marissa Meyer. You know, like, those are authors that I'm not going to let them go. But as for new ones coming up, unless I hear my other romance friends read it, it's not that I think you always age out of YA, but I have aged out of YA romance. Because it just doesn't do what I need it to do. I am a smut reader. Like, let's be honest, you know? So I can read a Starsight and have a great time, but it's not fulfilling all of my boxes. It's fulfilling a certain part of me. So I've just become more honest. So I still buy as many books as I ever did. In fact, I definitely do because, you know, this whole top stack of books right here costs the same price as one of Brandon Sanderson's books for me. In fact, like, this whole cart could be full of historical romances and cost the same price as one of his, you know? So there are a couple months, like, I was looking through my stacks, like, there are a couple months this summer where I purchased 60 books in the month. There's one August, I purchased 134 books. And I looked, 106 of them were historical romances that were between 50 cents and $3 a piece. Whereas in January, I bought 31 books, and half of those were Wheel of Time and other fantasy books. So you can see the difference. Like, I was still spending an average of the same amount of money, but one of them I greatly increased the amount of books that I was buying. So also, a couple things that I feel good about. I do donate my books, and particularly after I've read them, if I don't have a gut check that, like, oh, I'm going to reread this book, I donate it. I donate it back into my community. I have been reselling, like I said, on eBay, like new books I've bought just because I'm trying to get a little bit back for what I did, you know, especially if I haven't even read them. Like I have so many fantasy books I'm getting rid of that I didn't even read them. And so I definitely don't do that anymore. Like now when I go to Barnes & Noble, I might buy one fantasy for every 15 romances I'm buying because that's what my reading tastes are. Like I can look back on some months this year particularly and I read 1 or 2 fantasy books instead of in the past I was only reading 15 books a month and 9 of them were fantasy books, right? So there's just been changes that I've made in the type of purchaser that I am, right? So yeah, so I've never felt the pressure to buy particular things, but I do have some books that I fucking hate the light. We're just sketchy AF today. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on it. I know I did have 1 or 2 people who said they brought up the like gifts from publishers that they feel, and I don't really understand totally what the sentiment was behind this. I think that part of that is like a jealousy that comes from it. And here's the thing, I get that because I feel it all the time. Like I said, there's some of my friends who they have the connection, and if there's a new romance, they're getting their hands on it. But here's the thing, they have an established relationship that has been around for years. It took them hustle. It took them groundwork. I've only been around for 2.5 years. I have 4,500 subscribers. I do not have the amount of base that some, you know, media people for the companies are looking for. I just don't. And it would be foolish of me to demand that I get that, because I may get some of you to purchase the books that I'm talking about, but the amount of you who will buy a book because I said so is not the same as how many people will buy a book because Jess said so, who has almost 40K subscribers. Like, it's just different. I have 1/10 the size of her, and she just has that relationship that's cultivated. I know I'm just like called Jess out, but she's, I think, the best example we'll think of. But even she doesn't get all the books she wants, right? She made a thing about in a video that she recently did where like she still doesn't get every book that she requests because romance doesn't get the same respect. Oh, and particularly if you are a reviewer on YouTube, you don't get the same respect as if you have a blog or whatever. And I'm like, but who reads blogs? I mean, I know some people still do, but it's like, who reads blogs the same way that people do YouTube? Like, I don't understand, you know? So just think of that when you think of it. As to regards of getting gifts, like I still get solicited for people to send me their ARCs or their self-pub books, and I've definitely gotten stricter with that because I know the first time I got asked to do one, I was so excited. And then it was a book that was like a nonfiction true crime thing, and I didn't want to read it at all. So I always tell authors, like people who reach out to me to do one, is I'm like, is it romance? Is it romantic fantasy? Does it have romance in it? If your book doesn't have romance in it, I'm just telling you, I probably won't read it. So please don't send me a copy if this is a hardship for you, because the last thing I want is to overpromise that I will read a book. But if people want to send me one, I always have my P.O. box listed. They send me a book, like you just need to know that I can't promise I'm going to get to this book. But if you want to send me one, you just want it to be in a haul on my channel, I can do that. But I'm not going to promise to get to your book because that would be disingenuous. I am still 95% a mood reader. And even books that I make as a buddy read now, like I'm cutting out the fantasy buddy read from my channel because I never do the book. And I feel like a bad friend, a bad like buddy reader when I don't end up reading the book with the person. So I really only commit to buddy reads now that I know that I'm going to do. So yeah, I kind of went all over. So the last question I kind of want to talk about is is it good or bad consumerism on Booktube? Well, to go back to what I just said, I feel like it's inevitable. You are watching channels about buying books to find out if the books are good or bad. Like that is what my job is number one, I'm just reading for enjoyment. For these 2.5 years, there isn't a single video I've made that I have not wanted to make it. There have been days where I've been too lazy to film, but it is not because I didn't want to make the video. And I don't do rants too often. I keep things pretty positive. So if I read a book and don't say much about it, there's that. Or I did like it, but I talk too much as it is and didn't get to it. Like, I want to keep everything on here things that I want it to be. And so I have never really been reached out seriously for a collab on anything. I have done a couple of like cover reveals or read things for certain authors, but I don't overcommit myself to things because I know where I fit. I know what I like to do and what I can provide to an author, and that is not, going to be pimping books that I don't believe in or anything like that, right? And I feel like authors don't really ask you to do that. Any author who's, trying to buy or review from you isn't someone you want to support. Because if the work that you made is good, it's going to stand on its own no matter what. So I personally think consumerism is good. Like, it is helping our economy. It is helping the authors. It is supporting the thing that I love most, which is reading and talking about books. You just have to decide what's too much for you. And that's not something that I can do for you. And I'm not going to talk less about books to help you. Like, no one's asking me to talk less. I'm just saying that is never going to happen here. Like, I'm going to keep reading as much as I read and talking about them as much as I talk about them. And if you buy that book because I suggested it to you, I'm happy for you. But you have to decide if you're spending more than you can spend on those books. Like, that's not my job to look out for you in that way. It's not my job to guard your wallet for you. Like, I know what I can spend on books. And in fact, there's a sale that I'm going to look at right after I'm done talking with you. Because I got an email that I got a coupon for one of my favorite sites. So I'm going to go do it. A lot of it for me is I just want my collection to grow and be beautiful. And so I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to worry about what people think or what they tell me that I should or shouldn't spend. And no one really does. Mostly people will just be like in awe that I buy so many books. And I'm like, yeah, I buy a lot of books. It's a thing. So I don't know if this was helpful to you, but I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. This is a topic that when I looked it up, I realized it's been talked about off and on always, because I think people go through ups and downs. Like, I just said on a haul like 3 times ago that I was going to try to buy less books. But then I started selling some of my books, and then I was like, oh, I can buy more books because I sold some. So that didn't really help me that much. But if it was ever, I'm well aware that someday I won't be able to buy as much as I do. Like, I will get a house eventually, or I will be married eventually. And I won't be as free with my money. Like, my money won't be just my say anymore. Because there's plenty of you who watch me who are older than me, who are married, who have a family, who they just need to use library books and Kindle, and that's what they can do. And then there's some of you like me who you can just buy all the books that you want to because it's not a problem. And it's not a problem for me. Like, it's great. Like, I was restricted in the books that I could buy as a kid, and now being a responsible adult and pay my own bills and being my lady boss self that I am, I'm going to buy all the fucking books that I want to buy, and I hope you'll buy some of them with me. If you can't afford it, I hope you can find them at the library or rent them from somewhere, because it's fun. Like, it is such a rush. Like, today I'm locked at home. I'm quarantined still for another week, but I have a book delivery coming because I ordered some books from Thrift Book, and I'm excited as hell for them to show up, and I get a rush. And even though it's a package from myself to myself, I'm so excited to get it, and it's awesome. So there you go. I hope this was helpful to you in some way. So if you're interested in channel memberships, make sure you check out the join button down below. We talk more in detail about books. There are special perks that you can get. There's many different tiers, so definitely check that out if you're interested. Check out the link to my socials down below, and make sure you check out my Amazon storefront to see which books that I'm buying lately. See what I did right there? Yeah, you see what I did. I turned this conversation about consumerism into a plug for you to go buy books from me. So there you go. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.